Well, on the line now, that's an extraordinary story, that, isn't it? On the line now is Drugs Counsellor George Charlton from Durham. Good to speak to you again, George.
Hi, Alfie. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for chatting to us about this. Just some people listening won't remember as far back as 1971, the Misuse of Drugs Act was introduced. What was the aim of it at the time?
Well, at the time, Alfie, I think quite simply, the Misuse of Drugs Act was about eradicating drug harms and drug use, and it was about keeping people safe. That was the three tenets on which it was built. I think it's safe to say that it hasn't achieved any of those things, and there's an argument to suggest it's actually made things worse. So if we think about... Go on. Sorry, Alfie.
No, you carry on. I'm listening.
All right, okay. So if we think about kind of from a law perspective, right, and reducing harms, what we know is that we've got more drug market violence. There's more deaths from contaminated drugs. We heard on your report earlier around childhood exploitation in county lines. All of these things are supposed to be eradicated through the Misuse of Drugs Act. We also know in terms of health, which was another one of the tenets in terms of reducing drug harms, we're seeing a massive rise in HIV now in Scotland. We're seeing more poor mental health and coexisting drug and alcohol problems. We're seeing a rise in prison population. But ultimately, the greatest harm, Alfie, is drug-related deaths. And we know 4,393 people died in England and Wales. If we add in Scotland's 1,200 people, that's over 5,000 people who died last year. That's 15 people, Alfie, who died today of needless and avoidable drug-related deaths. And you know our region, Alfie, right? Because I'm passionate about our region, right? Last year, 679 drug-related deaths. The northeast of England holds a record once again for being the drug death capital of England and Wales. And it seems to me, right, is it not madness? Didn't Einstein say a definition of insanity is to repeat the same behaviour and expect different results?
Yes, he
and
did.
It seems to me what we're doing, what the government's doing at least, is it's saying that we're going to continue to do what we've always done, where for 50 years, drug-related deaths have done nothing but rise in the hope that things are going to get better, and they're not, and I think we need to take a different position.
We used to chat a lot with the former Durham, sadly he was no longer with us, the former Durham Police and Crime Commissioner about this, a different approach. The purpose of the law, other people will say who are listening right now, is to say something is wrong. So if you decriminalise certain drugs, doesn't that send out the wrong message? How do you get the message over that drugs are not good for you?
Yeah, well, equally, I think the first thing to do is that we'll have to nod our heads to Ron Hogg. You know, Ron was a friend of mine, an absolute legend, and a really courageous man, actually, to stand up and actually speak a narrative which was very different from everyone else. Alfie, listen, right? You talked about drugs being wrong. This can't be an argument which we have about right and wrong or from a moral position, right? It has to come from an evidence-based position. So we take dangerous drugs now. I don't know about you, Alfie, but I take a dangerous drug, and that drug's called alcohol. We have regulated drug markets right now. So what we know is people who drink alcohol are actually drinking a drug which is one carbon atom short of acetone, which is nail varnish remover. But we don't see it as being a drug, right? There was 24,000 deaths as a result of alcohol last year, yet it's not illegal. And what we do is we wrap safeguards around it. Another drug which we use now currently is tobacco. And again, when you look at tobacco, 78,000 people die from taking tobacco. Now, what we've done, Alfie, is both of those drugs were illegal at some point, right? Yeah. And what we've done is we've put health safeguards around them to tell people how to stay safe.
But how do you get that message over? How do you get that message over to the public and to politicians so they buy that? Because there will be politicians listening who are worried about being thought of as being soft on drugs.
Yeah, but I think the thing for me is this. I think we've got two outstanding MPs in the northeast who are backing this bill. We've got Graham Morris and we've also got Mary Glindon as well. Listen, you know what Boris has been doing during the COVID pandemic in the government, right? They've been saying we have to follow the guidance and we have to follow the evidence, right? So politicians and the public should be should feel safe in the guidance and the evidence from professionals, right? And we have to do this. And we have to do the same when it comes to drugs. Alfie, listen, man, right? We're sending people to prison. Suzanne Sharkey mentioned earlier, we're sending people to prison for taking drugs which are less harmful than alcohol, right? So if you think about cannabis, for instance, somebody will get sent to prison for growing a few plants, but yet GM Pharmaceuticals in Sevenoaks in Kent's growing 20 tons of it and shipping it abroad, and nothing's happening to them.
George,
and the problem that we have, it's not... Go on.
It's great. I've got to leave it there because I've got another piece to do. But thank you. Always great to have you on the show and to hear your points of view and to hear where you're at on this. The government says it has no plans to legalise drugs as it would send the wrong impression to the vast majority of people who do not use drugs. But you've heard George's case there. Your thoughts? 81333. Start your text BBC.
Start your text with BBC